As I mentioned earlier, she is the Chief Medical Officer for Munson Healthcare Systems. She is relatively new to her position, and it's a relatively new position, but as I stated earlier, I think it's an important position. It's one that shows that Munson is actually committed to broadening the health across our region, across our community, and she has already worked with me on a number of different things. One of the other things that I didn't mention before is that we actually have a program involved in identifying and transporting patients who are having acute infarcts to Munson as rapidly as possible. That's something that I was part of the team that helped put in place, and she's helped make that a system-wide project. So we have worked together on that in the past, and she's now going to stand up and give us some information, and then she's going to take the opportunity to introduce Dr. Eisenberg.
Moment of panic because my paper was missing, and I was like, oh no, I'm not doing this. So thank you very much for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and so excited to see colleagues from Petoskey and Cadillac and Traverse City and all over the place. So it really speaks to, I think, the community and the system and our region and some of the work that we're trying to do. So I had the great pleasure of having lunch today with Dr. Eisenberg, and while he has an impressive CV and list of things, I'm going to sum up because you didn't come here to listen to me, you came here to listen to him, and just to tell you a little bit about what I learned about him as a person. So our keynote speaker is the Director of Culinary Nutrition and Adjunct Associate Professor of Nutrition at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, the founding co-director of the Healthy Kitchens, Healthy Lives Conference, and founding co-director of the CIA Harvard Chan Teaching Kitchen Collaborative. I think it's safe to say he's a Harvard man, graduate of Harvard College, graduate of Harvard Medical School. He is an internal medicine board certified physician, and interestingly enough, the first U.S. medical exchange student to the People's Republic of China. He is an associate professor of medicine at Harvard School of Medicine, founding director of the Osher Research Center, and founding chief of the Division for Research and Education in Complementary and Integrative Medical Therapies at Harvard. He's also an author, a baker, a foodie, and a cook. As a mom and as a pediatrician, I so appreciate his embodiment and understanding of the link between nutrition and food in both our physical and emotional health. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Eisenberg, and I'll leave you with a quote, as many people have, from Hippocrates: "Let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food." Please help me welcome Dr. Eisenberg.
Is it too loud?
No.
I don't think I'm overstating it when I say that I'm not just honored, but moved. This panel was something I didn't expect. And I'm a kid from Brooklyn. You'll hear my story, but I've never been to this part of the world, ever. And I've dreamt about the very things you're dreaming about doing in this city my entire life. And I'll begin with a thought that I will end with, which is, you might just be the place that could invent the future for a healthy, resilient community. And I want you to think about it. I came here with a prepared talk, but I think you have all the puzzle pieces. And I'm very fond of a poem written by a rabbi who actually introduced me to my rabbi wife, Larry Kushner, and he talked about how when you meet different people, they each present a piece of the puzzle, but sometime when you're very lucky and the pieces fit, you get to see the picture in a way that nobody but God could see before. It's a beautiful image, and this panel was like 6 people with different pieces of the puzzle. I'm going to try to make you see how closely you already fit, and try to get you more excited about doing something unthinkable and courageous and potentially noticeable by the rest of the country and the rest of the world. I mean that. So I thought I was talking predominantly to a medical audience. So my first few slides come from that part of me. You heard I'm a, what we call back east, preparation H kind of guy, Harvard College, Harvard Medical. I was also a primary care doctor for 25 years. And in my view, physicians cure sometimes, heal often, comfort always. That's actually inscribed above the Harvard Medical School in stone. It's an anonymous quote. That's the aspiration of being a Hippocratic physician. I think you could think about it rather philosophically. Physicians provide technical expertise in diagnosis, therapeutic options, state-of-the-art therapies. That's what people come to us for. What's wrong? What can I do? What magic do you have in your bag? For thousands of years, physicians were the ones who knew enough to give a prognosis, or a better prognosis than anybody else. I think they have to be compassionate. And I think increasingly, if you see the world as I do, the connections between mind and emotion and psyche affect the body and vice versa. But I've always thought that the best physicians also need to anticipate this question. So what can I do about my health? You know, Paula, you were so courageous. I'm sure even as a little girl, you wanted to know, what could you do? We don't train physicians for that question. Because people want to know, what should I eat? How should I move? How should I think in a way that will optimize my well-being and quality of life? These are not part of the reflexive training, but they should be. And I, for one, am fascinated by this perspective that all too often the medical industrial complex focuses almost exclusively on the right side, the illness and disease side, from diagnosis to treatment, to disease management, to palliation, to death. We call that pathogenesis, pathology. But there's another half. I'm a student of China and Chinese medicine. I'll tell you that story later. I'm not a fan of Mao Zedong politically, but he was a great poet. And he said, women hold up half the sky. I love that metaphor. And I think the other half of health is the health part, the salutogenesis. How do you create, manifest, optimize, and protect health and well-being? There is almost no training in health and health preservation, health creation in orthodox, conventional, high-tech, modern medicine. So we're going to focus on the health side. It's not to say the other side is any less or more important. Two sides of the sky. So over the next hour, we're going to talk a little bit, and you've given me the luxury of time. I rarely can speak for more than 40 minutes. You've given me much more, so I will digress and tell stories. I want to reflect with you about our current circumstance, which is a disaster. The current nutrition training of clinicians in all specialties, which is a bigger disaster. And then I want to think out of the box. And these are the topics and themes I want to tease you with. I'm going to tell you about this conference that, for your benefit and now mine, attracted Dr. Faust and his wife Dana Faust. And has anybody else in the room been to that conference? One other brave soul. I'll tell you how that came about. I'll tell you what it's been doing. And you'll begin to see that there are James Foxes in now thousands of communities who are as obsessed as he is in rethinking the balance between pathogenesis and salimogenesis. Think about it. You have a fabulous world-class interventional cardiologist who wants to talk about food and cooking and sustainability and community resilience. Second, I'm going to talk about my favorite topic, which is this construct of a teaching kitchen. And I don't want you to be fooled by the name, because there's a reward for anybody who can help me think of a different way once you hear what it's about than teaching kitchen. Because most people go directly to a place with a stove and an oven and a sink. But you'll see teaching kitchen is a construct. It's a doorway in to learn life skills. And I want to talk to you about what that might look like. It involves a kitchen, but it's not just the physical kitchen. I'm going to show you a pilot study we did testing the prototype of a teaching kitchen. And then I'm going to tell you an amazing fact that over the last 18 months, 32 organizations from hospitals, universities, medical schools, and gigantic companies have built prototype teaching kitchens, are using them to teach children, adults, patients, employees, retirees, and touching the lives of over 40,000 people a year now. And as you hear me talk about the teaching kitchens that I know, because I picked them to be in this group, I want you to think about being the next member of that organization. And then lastly, I want to reflect on the future of healthcare for our children's children and how that might inform what you do here at Traverse City. So this is part 3, a fantasy of what healthcare might look like 25 years from now. So I'm going to share 3 inconvenient truths. This is the first one. These are data published by the Centers for Disease Control on the causes, the number of people who have died of cardiovascular disease, all cardiovascular disease, not just heart disease, but stroke and diabetes and the like, heart disease, cancer. I want to draw your attention to the fact that for the last half century, the line has been decreasing rather noticeably and dramatically. But in 2010, it went flat. Jane Brody, writing in the New York Times, said cardiovascular benefits from medical interventions may have reached a saturation point. Further improvements may depend largely on changes in society and personal behavior. What if we have reached our limit as to what interventional cardiovascular medicine and drugs and surgery can do for us? What if we've maxed out the devices and the external medications? And what if it's now up to us and our children and their children to take better care of themselves? There's evidence, and there has been for more than a decade, that America's children today will be the first in the nation's history to live shorter lives than their parents. Last year, the U.S. adult life expectancy decreased for the first time in many decades. We've all seen these statistics ad nauseum. Obesity and diabetes rates skyrocketing. Imagine that diabetes has quadrupled since I was a kid. Quadrupled. The projections worldwide are that the incidence of adult onset diabetes will go up by more than 100% in Latin America, in the Middle East, in all of China, in all of India, by 100% in 2030. That's only 12 years from now. And yet, we kind of know what we should be doing. This is arguably one of the most impressive randomized trials ever undertaken in the history of modern clinical medicine. The Spanish government, working with funds, I would add, from the olive oil industry, did the following experiment. They identified 7,500 adults in Spain who were at high risk for cardiovascular disease. But they didn't have cardiovascular disease. And they randomized them to 3 groups. One group they just said carry on, that was the control diet. The other 2 groups they taught about the sort of classic Mediterranean diet, which is not complicated, it's plant forward. It's got a lot of vegetables. It's got little red meat, really used as a condiment or a treat. It's got olive oil, not butter. It's got a lot of nuts. The 2 groups that were encouraged to pursue and enjoy the cultural heritage of the Mediterranean diet, one got a supplement, about a quart a week of extra olive oil that they were asked to pour on everything. And the other group got a bag of nuts that they were asked to eat in small quantities every day. And over the next 5 years, the percentage of adults in that group who had heart attacks or strokes went down 30% in the group on the Mediterranean diet with either olive oil or nuts. 30% reduction in heart attacks or stroke, or death from either. This is not subtle. There is no statin drug that can do this. There is no drug whatsoever that can touch this. They had to stop the trial because it was unethical not to encourage the control group to eat a healthier lifestyle. But there's more, as they say in the infomercial. The rates of diabetes in the 2 Mediterranean diet groups went down 40% and 18%. Why? Because they had complex carbohydrates, whole grains, not simple carbohydrates. But breast cancer rates went down. I think most people don't realize that there are a large number of cancers that are related to diet and obesity, including breast cancer. Now, there are still many parts of the world. This is from the book, What We Eat, The Hungry Planet. It's what families around the world in pictures tend to eat in a week. Some very creative photographer went to random households and said, let's get all your food for a week and put it on the table. This was turkey. It's a little bit of meat, there's a lot of vegetables, there's a lot of whole grains, there's a lot of olives and nuts. It's a Mediterranean diet. This is us. And I want to say, it's not just African Americans or Latino Americans or Asian Americans or white Caucasian Americans, it's all Americans. I view this as toxic food-like substances. There's no real food here. There's almost no vegetables. It's chemicals and sugars and corn syrup. It's deadly. Furthermore, there's a whole generation, if not 2 generations, that think this is normal. What have we done? So to make matters worse, how are our hospitals doing in the way of food? So these next few photographs were taken at the Boston Children's Hospital, arguably one of the top 2 children's hospitals in the world, and the Brigham and Women's Hospital, arguably one of the top 10 hospitals in the world. Serve pizza, and chocolate chip cookies, and soda, and candy, and potato chips, and hamburgers, and ovo bun. We got rid of cigarettes 30 years ago. I was still in medical school and the entire faculty quit smoking. I watched it. They were all heavy smokers, all of my teachers. They realized that it was dangerous and they had to make a statement. And I'm going to use this parallel again. In medicine, and the doctors in the room will back me up here, there's this notion of see one, do one, teach one. So in this instance, it was if the doctor changed, ultimately they would talk to the patients about changing, and ultimately the society would change. We did it with cigarettes, but there's a difference. You can live without cigarettes. You can't live without food, so it's not quite that simple. But there is a parallel. How soon can I start her on a fad diet? The new food labels are a bit more candid, but don't let that scare you. Something from the supplement count, as if taking a pill can make up for the world's worst diet. What a preposterous thought. And mind you, I studied alternative complementary medicine my whole life, but this was never what I studied it for. Lifestyle will trump supplementation every day. To be honest, how much are you exercising? Lest you think this is a challenge only for the United States, or we lead in this realm, let me remind you of some statistics that I find absolutely horrifying. And they are now 7 years, almost 8 years out of date. I lived in China in 1979. I was sent there by the National Academy of Sciences to study Chinese medicine in Beijing. There were only 12 Americans in the whole country. There were no fat people, and there were no diabetic people. So when I see that in 1985, the percentage of overweight or obese kids was trivial, 1 or 2% at most, and I bet that was an exaggeration, and that by 2010, 1 in 4 boys and 1 in 6 girls was overweight or obese, that's 30 years. By 2000, 15% of the humans with diabetes lived in China, when there were none in 1980. By 2010, it was 1/3 of all humans with diabetes. When you add India, along with China, in 2010, half of humans living with diabetes lived in India and China. It's much higher than that now. Their societies will implode from within because of this tsunami wave. The fact that type 2 diabetes, a largely preventable disorder, has reached epidemic proportions is a public health humiliation. I think it's worse than that. If the hurricanes and nature don't destroy us, or if we don't destroy one another with nuclear weapons, we will die from the way we are living around the world, and we will financially crumble. A strong, integrated, and imaginative response is required. That's why I'm here. I want to throw some radical ideas at you. And again, I want to remind you, you have the opportunity to lead. We also live in a toxic stress environment. And at least 40 or 50% of people, when they're stressed, eat more. This is the mental part, not just the physical part. So let me summarize the situation. We have 100 million Americans with prediabetes or diabetes. Think about that. 100 million Americans with metabolic syndrome and or diabetes on the fast track to a heart attack or stroke today. Most feel utterly stuck. They know they should be eating differently, moving more. They don't know what to do. It's never been modeled for them. And their doctors don't know how to help them. The health professionals' required clinical competencies in this area are minimal to non-existent. I'll go further than that. One of the speakers, where are you? Stacy? Who was the first speaker? Spoke. Open this up. Casey. Casey reminded us that the average number of hours in 4 years of medical school that a physician thinks about nutrition is between 15 and 17. it's almost all biochemistry or vitamin insufficiency. There is no requirement on any examination currently to be a licensed physician or cardiologist or endocrinologist that shows that a physician knows about nutrition and, more importantly, how to advise patients about foods, preparing foods, portion control. You don't have to know that to be a practicing doctor or specialist. I think it's absurd. I think it's a scandal. And it's a scandal around the world. So let's think outside the box. My whole life, as will become apparent in a moment, has been about bringing the medical community in partnership with the culinary food community. They're each $3 trillion of our economy. They're almost always separate. They almost never talk to one another. That's why I got chills listening to your panel in this town, where it is a bottom up. It is people with their puzzle piece saying, where can we fit? I've never seen it so vivid before. This is why I do what I do. This is my father, Joseph Eisenberg, at age 15, in his father's Jewish bakery in Brooklyn. And his father learned to be a Jewish baker in Poland and then escaped the Nazis. And I learned to cook and bake before I could read or ride a bicycle. Because if I wanted to see my father, who was my hero, he worked every weekend. So I went in with him at 5 in the morning, and I cut the strawberries, and I cracked the eggs, and I braided the challah, and I made the rugloff. And I watched the power of making delicious food for people, and the joy it gave everybody. It was not lost on me. But the sad reality is, when I was 10 and he was 39, he died of a heart attack. And his mother had died 6 weeks before, and my mother's mother had died 7 weeks before, and my mother's father died in the bed next to me 8 months later. And my mother was left alone with 4 children. They're now happy ending, 2 doctors, 2 lawyers, happily married, 10 grandchildren. She's going to be 88 in 3 weeks. So don't get all choked up. But as a 10-year-old, and in the 1960s, for those of you old enough to remember, nobody talked about these things. She thought she was protecting us by never mentioning why and how each died of a different disease that was inexplicable. So I said, I'm going to medical school, because there's carnage going on in my family. And I need to figure out, probably out of self-preservation. Because you've given me enough time, I'll tell you the connection to China. So I'm 17 and Nixon and Kissinger are opening up China. On the front page of the New York Times is James Reston, the op-ed editor, who's snooping around following what Henry Kissinger is doing for Richard Nixon in 1971 in Beijing. In that era, this was James Bond. Chinese were the red enemy. They were our mortal foes. What the heck is Nixon, the anti-communist warrior, doing in China? James Reston is there, develops acute spontaneous appendicitis, is operated on in a hospital that's built by the same architects who built Harvard Medical School, the same teachers that came from Harvard and Yale taught the surgeons who operated on him. The whole hospital was funded by the Rockefeller Foundation. This is the Peking Union Medical College. And 3 days after his operation, which was done by conventional Western surgeons trained by Harvard and Yale professors in the 40s, he still has abdominal pain. And on the front page of the New York Times, he writes a tongue-in-cheek obituary to his appendix. I swear to God, that's what it was called. You can look it up. And he says they brought in the acupuncturist. Well, what the heck is an acupuncturist? A doctor with needles put 3 skinny needles in his left kneecap and his abdominal pain vanished. This was the shocker around the world. But as a 17-year-old pre-medical student about to go to Harvard College, this was Star Wars. So I went to college knowing I wanted to be a doctor. But I had a girlfriend who said, "You're really interested in this Chinese medicine stuff. Why don't you learn Chinese?" Smart woman. I learned Chinese. I fell in love with China. Fast forward, by the time I was graduating Harvard Medical School, Carter normalized relations with China. The U.S. Academy of Sciences was looking for a dirty dozen to be sent as the first entourage of scholars. And even though my Chinese comes out with a Brooklyn Jewish accent, but here's the punchline. Why? I wanted to go because Chinese medicine teaches that prevention is always superior to intervention, and the way you eat, move, and think impacts your health and your recuperative power. And I thought to myself, what if they're right? So that's 44 years ago. There's the connection between China, cooking, medicine, and food for me. These are 2 sides of my personhood. So let's come back. What's the evidence that suggests that maybe cooking could impact weight, health, and happiness? There's not a lot of science. Interesting observation made by an economist at Harvard. These are the obesity rates of the industrialized world. The US and the UK, in the industrialized countries, are the 2 heaviest. But look at Italy and France, that know a few things about spectacular cuisine, and I would add mindful eating. Their obesity rates are much lower. It turns out that Italian and French adults spend more time each day shopping for, preparing, cooking food. Although not mentioned in this study, I would bet that they spend more time mindfully eating together too. Those in the UK and the US spend the least amount of time. This is better science though. The better you cook, the more often you eat vegetables. My friends at the Culinary Institute of America found her saying anybody can cook a hamburger. You gotta leave the vegetables to the professionals. Children who were more involved in home meal preparation consumed healthier diets. Your story and mine. Parents and grandparents teaching us to cook before we could do much anything else, giving us the love of the cooking and the enjoyment with family. I want to talk to you because I want to hear from you what your students have said and how many of them were taught to cook before they were 10. Because my theory is a lot of chefs are chefs because they had the experience you and I had. And that's what gave them the lift that said I could enjoy this the whole rest of my life. This is the largest survey ever done, National Health Inventory. 10,000 adults, and it turns out that cooking dinner frequently at home is associated with a healthier diet. Again, these are just observations, they're not proof. The single largest study is one I did with colleagues in the School of Public Health, 100,000 health professionals, followed for 14 years, 2 million person years of data. And we found that based on the baseline survey of how frequently you cooked meals from scratch or you made lunches and dinners at home, turns out people who ate lunches and dinners prepared at home over 14 years had much lower rates of diabetes. Again, this is circumstantial evidence. Here's another of my theories. If any of you know the book, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. He says there are a few keystone habits that change everything. He uses a couple of examples. People who habitually exercise always exercise for life because it makes them feel good. It makes them look good. They associate with other people who feel and look good. It gives them confidence, vitality, better sex lives. They will always exercise. And you know what? Their kids will too. Habitual family dinners are equally impressive. It turns out across all continents, all socioeconomic groups, families that eat together with the kids, whether it's 2 parents or 1, the kids do better. You also brought this up, but there's real data here. So might cooking be an unrecognized keystone habit? I believe it is. I have 3 kids in their 20s. Taught them all to cook, because every day I cook. I've cooked every day of my life. Every day that I'm not traveling, I'm the one cooking. I do all the shopping. My wife burns water. She's But all 3 of my kids have cooked with me since they could stand next to me. And you know what? They're the kids who went to school and had the salads and the vegetables and didn't care when other people made fun of them because they knew it was bad for them and they didn't need it. They had it as a treat. They're the kids in college that cook for everybody. They're the kids after college that everybody wants to go out with to the better restaurants and go to the farmers markets with and then come home and cook with. They're very popular. It's a great skill. But they shop differently, they read menus differently, they fill their plates differently. They savor taste differently. They are present. If you learn to cook and you teach a kid, you say to a kid, Johnny, what do you want to learn? And then you let Johnny learn to make the pesto or Johnny's favorite marinara sauce. And they master it, and then they make it for Mom on Mother's Day. It's the gift that keeps on giving it. So yeah, I think they live differently. Inconvenient truth number 2. Very rare for medical experts and chefs to come together. Unheard of. 20 years ago, I approached the Culinary Institute of America, arguably one of the top training schools for chefs in the world. And I said, I have a really cockamamie idea. I think someday we should build teaching kitchens in every hospital. Told him my story. And he said, if we're going to be that crazy about it, why don't we put them in schools? And why don't we put them in workplaces and community centers? And I said, you know what I'd like to do first? I'd like to have a conference for doctors about food, because they don't know anything about food or cooking. So 20 years ago, we dreamt up this conference that James talked about, Healthy Kitchens, Healthy Lives. It happens once a year. Here's my shameless plug. I'll repeat it later, healthykitchens.org. You go to this conference center in Napa that's gorgeous. It's in the middle of wine country. The best scientists on earth present the data that says this is why we should eat more nuts and less red meat, et cetera, et cetera. Here's the understanding why. Here's the epidemiology. Here's the clinical proof. The people that wrote that Spanish paper come and present it. And then the chefs say, let's translate it. Let's show you 3 whole grain dishes, door to table, 10 minutes. Let's show you 6 Mediterranean dishes. Let's show you great vegetables from Southeast Asia, all under $2 a serving. Fast, easy. Stuff is in your pantry. You can get these ingredients all year. Delicious, fast, healthy, sustainable, affordable. Watch me. You know, doctors are there, they're shocked. I mean, James would tell you, it's pretty shocking. You go to a medical conference, this is what you're expecting, not this. But then the sizzle happens and the smoke, and we've got cameras everywhere, and you can see everything. You can see, you know, the freckles on his knuckles. You can see everything he does. And then all the people at the conference, there are 425 seats. They taste 325 dishes over 4 days. And they're given all the recipes, because we have 70 chefs working 24 hours a day. Because we want people to taste it. And usually 3 days into it, people are like, I could live like this the rest of my life. Who knew that healthy, delicious, affordable, fun food could be so great? But there's more. Because I insisted we do it there, because we can fit 400 people in the kitchens. Remember the do one, see one, do one, taste, see one, do one, teach one? This is see one, taste one, do one, teach one. But you take 100 surgeons who've operated on 10,000 people and have never held a kitchen knife, you have to show them how to hold the knife. You have to show them how to cut a carrot. But the mastery of making a simple dish and then being proud of it, and taking a picture, and calling home, and working in a team, people are changed forever, because you know why? They're representative of the 100 million Americans who are inhibited because they think they can't do it. They're afraid. So we hold their hands, we say, come into the kitchen. It's going to be fun. And it is fun. We talk about optimizing our diets, how to perform a nutritional assessment. What are healthy carbohydrates, and how do you cook them? And how do you spruce them up so they're not boring? How do you add dried fruits and nuts and vegetables? And how do you do that instead of potatoes and white rice? We talk about fats, what you need to know about fats. We deconstruct the popular diets and make it clear that they can't work and they don't work. We talk about vitamins and supplements. But then we emphasize the behavioral piece. This is my segue to the bigger concept of the teaching kitchen. Nutrition and cooking is one leg of a three-legged stool. Another leg is movement and exercise. And I know we have an exercise physiologist in the West. Then there's the mindfulness piece. Most Americans are not present when they eat. They're in the football game, they're in the music, they're reading the paper, they're talking endlessly and dripping food. They are not eating when they eat. If you're not present when you eat, you are eating mindlessly, and you almost always forget what you just did or when you were full. Plus, you miss all the benefits of being in the midst of people you love and care about and enjoying company over great food that you can comment on, as they do almost excessively in places like Italy, France, and China, I would add. So then we bring up another topic, motivational interviewing. How many of you are familiar with that term? How many are not? Okay. I'm a doctor. In 1972, I was taught and learned to talk to patients in what's called the expert approach. Mr. Jones, you and I both see now that you're hypertensive, your weight is up, your cholesterol is up, your triglycerides are up, your blood sugar is up, you're going to go into diabetes. You really should and need to lose weight, see an exercise person, join a gym, see my nutritionist. It doesn't work. It's worthless. It's like putting the label on the cigarettes that said these will kill you. It didn't work. We had to be much more creative. Motivational interviewing can be learned by anyone, but it takes a different stance. It says, Mr. Jones, you see all the facts. Tell me about you, the healthiest you ever were in your life. Paint a picture. How old were you? Where were you? What were you doing? Professionally, physically, socially? What did you love about that era? What do you miss? What do you most want to get back? Do you think you could do it? What would you have to give up? How ambivalent are you? That takes immense training. But you know what, just listening to that, can't you realize that's a different relationship with a health professional? Saying, I am here to help you decide when you're ready to decide that you want to make the first move. And my only goal is to stay with you as your coach till you see you can do it. And to protect you from making ridiculous aspirations that you're going to lose 50 pounds this year for your son's wedding. So we also bring in people from Silicon Valley and say, show us the next generation of Fitbits and glucose monitors in your contact lens. And show us where we're going on the World Wide Web. And show us what's going to happen in our medical records when everybody is wired perpetually and we can do everything about them. But finally, and this brings me to teaching kitchens, we talk about ensembles of medical, culinary, and lifestyle experts to teach the next generation. These are just examples of what people at the conference learn about in the kitchens. You get to choose, do I want to learn about whole grains, vegetables, breakfast, spices, eating well on a budget? I gave you a handout of the take-home messages. I would prefer you read that on your own, but they're simple. You know them all. Eating more fruits and vegetables, healthy carbs, healthy proteins, better fats, avoid processed desserts. The ideal plate has a quarter vegetable, quarter protein, and half vegetables and fruits, quarter protein, and quarter carbs that are healthy. Consider the dessert flip. Imagine if the default in America wasn't a giant piece of cheesecake or chocolate cake with a cherry on top, but a giant bowl of cherries or strawberries with a tiny bit of cheesecake on the bottom. That's the dessert flip. Imagine if that's what our kids grew up. You know, they'd be very happy with fruit and a little bit of chocolate cake or creme brulee. Why do we have to give them a giant vat? We talk about portion control and portion distortion. Most people have no conception of how many calories they're consuming, but you have to help people learn. It's a learned skill. We could teach our kids in 3rd grade how to count calories and read labels. We have to reduce salt. The sugar story you know about. Wine, believe it or not, for most people it's healthy if it's consumed in moderation. 1 drink for women, 2 drinks for men. Reduces heart disease by a lot. But then there's the behavioral pieces, the exercise piece. This one is counterintuitive, but I want to highlight it. If we taught every overweight person in America that their physiology would be dramatically different and their life expectancy much better if they changed the foods they ate, even if they didn't lose a pound. If people with diabetes went on healthy carbohydrates instead of unhealthy carbohydrates, their blood sugar control would tighten up instantly. So even if people will never get back to their pre-wedding or high school weight, they could be much healthier. And mindfulness, I would argue, is the centerpiece. Learning to be present, learning to be appreciative, learning to connect the mind with the body and also the sense of satiety is almost a lost art in the West. We have to reteach it. And viewing healthy eating as a lifestyle. You'll see these on your sheets. I'm not going to spend time on them. I want to get ahead to the teaching kitchen. I will also tell you that we did research on physicians before and after this conference. And lo and behold, 3 months after attending this meeting for 3 days, they prepared food more often, they were more aware of their calories, they ate more whole grains, vegetables, nuts, and they felt much more confident talking to patients about their nutritional status and how to make the first step towards a healthier self. Healthy kitchens, healthy lives. You're invited. February 8th. So what have we learned from all the diet studies? We've spent $150 million of your dollars on at least a half a dozen studies that I can think of. Studies of Atkins and Zone and Weight Watchers and Ornish. And you know what the take-home message is? No pattern favors any one of them. Different people lose weight on all of them if they focus on them. You could go on the Twinkie diet and lose weight if you only ate Twinkies and a few of them and not much else. The point is, diets are restrictive and we are probably not wired to live in a perpetual state of perceived deprivation. They don't work. We all know people who died and lost the weight and regained it. What about other options? Third inconvenient truth. Optimal health, and I would argue optimal weight, require you knowing something about nutrition, cooking, exercise, mindfulness, how to use the internet, how to work with a coach. But until now, there's been no place to learn all of those things in a fun way. Now, I'm a primary care doc. I don't have a favorite organ. Similarly, if we want to help people live a healthy lifestyle, they have to be masterful at all these things, but there's no place to do them, and you can't say that's the one. So I said, let's build a teaching kitchen as the place where people come to learn all of those things. It's a construct. The kitchen itself is the neon light. It's the attractant. It's the doorway in to a life skills immersion class, because people want to learn how to use the pots and pans and hold the knives. But it's a come in and we'll teach you to cook without showing them all the skills that they're going to learn. Because my underlying hypothesis for decades now has been, if you could take a population at risk, people with prediabetes, diabetes, obesity, heavy kids, parents and kids with juvenile diabetes, and randomize half of them to a teaching kitchen, the group that got this teaching kitchen would change behaviors, change clinical outcomes, reduce clinical medical costs, bend these cost curves that are choking us. But they would live better lives. You could save generations if you could shift a family in this direction. So we built a prototype, my colleagues at Harvard and the Culinary Institute, and we tested it about 3 years ago. We said, let's have a 4-month course, and let's include nutrition, culinary competencies, mindfulness, exercise, health coaching. This was published in the American Journal of Lifestyle Medicine just a few months ago. We recruited employees of the Culinary Institute as proxies for employees in any self-insured company or hospital or federal entity, because they look the same. And we said, let's take the employees of the Culinary Institute, not the chefs, these are the people that manage the campus. And we said, we're going to meet every Thursday night for 2.5 hours. We're going to give them a beautiful dinner. We're going to cook that dinner in front of them. We're going to talk to them about nutrition education, reading labels. We're going to teach them mindfulness instructions in short bursts so they figure out what mindfulness means. We're going to talk to them about wearable devices. We're going to give them a cheap pedometer so they see they're sedentary and they're nowhere near the 10,000 steps and they can do that. And we're going to assign them a health coach, and once a week, 3 times a month max, they can call the health coach to begin to explore whether they want to change, how they're going to change, and then how to change. Free, it's an experiment, Harvard approved. And then every other Saturday morning, they're going to come into the kitchens and they're going to cook for 5 hours, everything they watched the last 2 weeks. Because if they don't learn the skills, it's just like watching the Food Network. You know, as Michael Pollan says, how good is your basketball game the night after the NBA playoffs? It's ridiculous. The Food Channel is just entertainment. We're not teaching everybody. This is teaching people, groups of 5, cooking. You'll see pictures. You got the health coach. These are the same people that you live with in your hospitals, in your businesses, in your communities. This is the 100 million Americans. We got a broad age range, because I picked them to be a broad age range. There were more women than men. Some came in as couples, and lo and behold, the couples that came in and learned to do this together changed the most. Some had kids at home and wanted to see how that interrupted things, how it worked, whether they could change the kids. And I intentionally picked people who were a snapshot of America, mainly overweight, obese, high blood pressure, prediabetes, diabetes, but also 22% who had no risks who were me at 25. They had families that had dropped dead. They didn't want to be like Uncle Joe or Aunt Mary. They were there to learn preventively. I wanted to see, would this course be satisfying to all of them? Well, as you'll see if you read this paper, over 4 months, yes, their waist size came down, their blood pressure came down. All the clinical signs that we were aiming at happened. But what I was more excited about was nobody dropped out. It was effortless to get these people to volunteer because they loved the idea of learning to do this. They changed what they bought in the supermarkets. They changed how they ordered off menus. They were happier. They ate more often with their family, and to a person they said, we've all lived with diets. We're now free. You gave us the tools. And one of the subjects summed it up, and I'll give you the quote in a second, but here's some pictures. It's a demonstration kitchen at the Culinary Institute. We could do didactic presentations. The chef could say, we're going to go over soups today, or whole grains today, or salad and salad dressings today. They would watch. This is Thursday night. And then the chefs would go to town. They'd say, let's make the soup. You know, I didn't know the magic of making chicken soup included never boiling the chicken. It's got to be just below boiling. I never knew that. If you boil the chicken, it's a rubber chicken. If you leave the temperature below boiling, it's soft and juicy and delicious. I learn tricks every week, and I've been cooking every day of my life. But they taught the tricks. It was like the magicians bringing up the curtain, saying, here's how you do it. You want those onions caramelized in a way that is just orgasmic. This is how you do it. On Saturdays, they came into the kitchen, 8 o'clock. We had yogurt and granola and a green smoothie, and we went to town. These are people that didn't know how to hold a knife the first week. By the 7th weekend, they were choreographed like Michelin-rated chefs. They were working in teams. It was gorgeous. We filmed it. I should sort of cut the film and do the editing because it's unbelievable. They learned how to make multi-grain, simple, idiot-proof breads. They learned to make healthy proteins, all basic egg cookery. They made dozens of healthy vegetable dishes. They learned to cook for a family of 6 for under $20 in under an hour. Real skills. And then we talked when we ate, and we troubleshot about the teenager who was still on the white beige diet, the husband that was still just a Neanderthal eating only meat, and how to reconcile, and where to get farro for less than $14 a pound, and where to get the, but you know what? They taught each other. That was critical, because they taught each other, I have the solution for you. Then we did something that I'm very proud of. The first group of 20 wearing the hats made lunch for the next group of 20. And this was their last weekend, and they were learning 7 different techniques. By the way, we taught techniques, not dishes. Because if you can make 3 different whole grain dishes, you can make 300 variations. If you can make 2 soups, you can make 50. If you can make 3 salad dressings, you can make an infinite number. So this last weekend, the first group is making all these new dishes with new techniques, and the first group says, there is no way. In 4 months, 3 months, I'm going to make a bouillabaisse and an arranged salad and an Arctic chard, the skin so crispy it's like a potato chip on perfectly seasoned lentils. And the first group said, that's the easy part. We didn't think we could do it either. It's easy. And we save money. And our kids and our spouses cook with us. And this is the quote I wanted to share with you. One said, I relate my story to Dorothy's from The Wizard of Oz. She had her red shoes the whole time, giving her the choice and ability to go home whenever she was ready. I too had the red shoes. This program showed me I could make healthy living changes whenever I was ready. I almost wept when this woman said it. This is a woman who was claustrophobic, who actually worked from home making the restaurant appointments for guests for the Culinary Institute. Agoraphobic, that's what she was. She changed. So we concluded in this study, it's possible to build a teaching kitchen. It's possible to put it in a work site. It's one model, not the ultimate model, but it's feasible. And we can measure outcomes. It's a start. So in the last 10 or 15 minutes, and I'll speed it up because I want to leave time. What if these kitchens were built in medical schools, nursing schools, regional health systems like yours, K through 12, which is really the ultimate target, universities, workshop, corporate work sites? Well, Henry Ford built the first one. This is West Bloomfield. If you've never been there, it's mind-boggling. I saw this about 8 years ago, and it was the first time I said, it can be done. They hired the former executive of the Ritz-Carlton. They made him the CEO of a new hospital in a Jewish suburb, and he designed the hospital like a Ritz-Carlton CEO. You walk into this place, it's gorgeous. There are greeters at the door. The first thing you see is a teaching kitchen that seats 93 people. Right near the information desk. In the back is a hydroponic organic garden that grows fruits, vegetables, and all the herbs for the hospital year-round, and 15% of the lettuce. These are being built now in business schools and hospitality schools at the University of New Hampshire. The Cleveland Clinic is teaching kitchens for heart patients. A community hospital in upstate New York near the Culinary Institute teaches employees, patients, community members. Dartmouth University has an MD, chef, pediatrician who does a demo on food before every medical grand rounds every week. And they, like you, are bringing in the farmers and the health professionals, saying food, health, sustainability, community, they're a soulmate for you. Rooftop gardens in New York City. We just came back from Maine General last weekend, I'll tell you why. Gorgeous hospital, modeled after the West Bloomfield Hospital. Teaching physicians, staff, will teach employees, community. This is part of a wellness center, which is the front of the hospital. Boston Medical Center not only has a gorgeous new kitchen, but downstairs has a food pantry where they prescribe food to people with food insecurity, and then they invite them to go upstairs and learn how to cook that food that was available that week from farmers in Massachusetts. And they have a rooftop garden that they're now bringing all the food down below to the pantry from. I could go on and on. This is in New Jersey. LA Kitchen has a different kitchen. Who do they train? Not patients or medical students. They train teenagers who are aging out of foster care to become line cooks so they can get a job. And they train what they call returning citizens who are moving from prison to society, and they place them in restaurants. These are all teaching kitchens. There are a number of YMCAs, 6 YMCAs and 6 Boys and Girls Clubs that are tinkering with inexpensive teaching kitchens. Can you imagine the power of 1,000 Boys and Girls Clubs and YMCAs teaching kids after school how to have fun cooking healthy, delicious, sustainable, SNAP, affordable food? That's what we talked about in Maine this weekend. There is an organic farm outside of Cincinnati that said, we're going to build a teaching kitchen as a gift to the community to teach children about where the food comes from, how to cook it, and they teamed up with the University of Cincinnati Medical School so they could run patients through it. It is gorgeous. It has induction cooktops, gas cooktops, electric cooktops, everything a home cook could ever expose, and it's sitting in the middle of the field. It's a prototype. Google, who has sworn to create the healthiest and most satisfied workforce on the planet for the next century, has 6 teaching kitchens. I helped design the one on the top right in Mountain View. The one on the bottom left was opened last year. It faces the Statue of Liberty. Last year, Google educated 26,000 employees worldwide in teaching kitchens around the globe. Think about that. Barilla, the company that makes a lot of pasta and actually owns all the cracker companies that you eat, has a mobile teaching kitchen. See, they come in all different shapes and sizes. You don't need the $2 million built-in like Turner Farm. You can have the $200,000 kitchen on a truck, or you can do what Stanford does for thousands of Stanford undergraduates now. They have a pop-up kitchen, a modular kitchen. It's 10 induction cooktops and a cutting board and a knife next to the kitchen. You could put this in every school, every faith-based institution in the United States. Think of all the high schools and junior high schools with kitchens and cafeterias that are empty all night and every weekend. But all of these kitchens were being built independent of one another. So this is the news to you since you were last at Hilton. 3 years ago, as you said you weren't there you were there 4 years ago. 3 years ago I said, I've been talking about teaching kitchens for 15 years here. Has anybody built one? 140 hands went up. And I cherry-picked 30 of them. And I said, you and you and you and you, we're going to build a teaching kitchen collaborative. We're going to share experiences, because I want to know what's happening at Stanford and at the YMCAs and at LA Kitchen and at Dartmouth. And we're going to share notes. 32 organizations meeting twice a year. We share everything, the curriculum, the kitchen facilities, what's in the pantry, what are we teaching people, what do we think are the core competencies. Now mind you, some are teaching patients, some are teaching kids, some have the goal of bending cost curves, others just want kids to eat less soda and chew on more vegetables. We're designing research strategies to track all of those outcomes. The goal is to evaluate teaching kitchens on all of these populations, because from my perspective, they are life skills immersion centers. They are learning laboratories for everyone. They just need to be customized for each group. Because you still have to learn to hold a knife. You still have to learn to read what's on the nutrition facts, and you still have to learn portion control. And I don't care if you're 5 years old or you're 50 with diabetes. It's the same information. So I picked the ones that I trusted, I knew wouldn't grandstand, and would share their piece of the puzzle. And they are all committed to creating a shared research network. Because when we can track the outcomes of behavior, clinical change, and cost in 20, 30, 50, 100,000 people a year, then maybe we can stand up to the naysayers, the skeptics, and the big industry giants who will be threatened. But this is our collective future. I'll just show you some of the names of the members. Cleveland Clinic, Harvard, UC San Francisco, Berkeley, Kaiser Permanente. These are not second-tier organizations. The closest one to you is University of Michigan that just joined. I can introduce you to them. They have a full-time faculty member who was just hired from Johns Hopkins, who did her PhD in cooking and the perception of cooking among the average American. She gave one of our great talks this last week. We met in Maine, all 32 organizations, 100 people. But we're also co-sponsored and co-funded by Gorilla and Google and Compass and a Japanese think tank that wants to put this in every major Japanese corporation in Tokyo, because they're going off the rails like China, just a little more slowly. So right now, we're mainly in the United States. We've got a foothold in Italy, thank goodness, and they're trying to bring it to the Italian schools, and then to Europe, and in East Asia to Japan. We have working groups on best practices, and now we can begin to share this with you. So I'll come back to where I began. If you want to do this, we can share with you what we think you need for your best practices, what you need in your kitchen. We have research strategies. We're exploring the optimization of information technology, cameras, the web. We want to build a cooking video library, and we want a unified data collection, because that's going to be the most valuable asset. So we're planning multi-site studies for 3 populations, and see if any of these float your boat in Traverse City. What if there was a reproducible, scalable teaching kitchen model for any adult with cardiovascular risk. Overweight, obesity, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, same program. What if there was a similar, parallel, but different program for kids and their parents or guardians, whoever they cook with? I am obsessed with the notion that it is insane to teach kids alone or parents alone. I want them to learn as a family, cook as a family, eat as a family. That's the only solution. And they're the future. And then there's food insecurity, which, as we all heard, is really the biggest problem. We have people that weigh too much and are undernourished, and it transcends populations, adults, kids, geographies. Our goal is to demonstrate changes in behavior, outcomes, and costs. We're going to start having the website, which is tkcollaborative.org, start pushing stuff outwardly. It's all been under wraps. It's all been internal, but this year we'll push out. And the ultimate goal is, apropos of the comments of Robert Wood Johnson's language, to create a culture of health. I'm going to skip the last slides because I don't have time, but I will focus on one. Health systems of the future will learn a lot from genetics, but genetics won't solve our problems, nor will all basic science. We'll have tertiary care hospitals, which will be in and out. We'll have most medicine in outpatient centers and multidisciplinary or integrative care centers. But in the future, we'll need to have access to exercise therapy centers, teaching kitchens, mindfulness and wellness centers with health coaches, not just psychopharmacology and psychotherapy. Right now, to access this, you have to be very rich and very smart and very connected. But if we can envision it and create it in a few locations, such as yours, we can make it so. And finally, we're about to shift, because if we don't, we'll go bankrupt, from what's called the fee-for-service economy to the pay-for-performance economy. And we're going from paying doctors for every diagnostic and therapeutic diagnostic test and therapeutic procedure to keeping people out of the hospital. It's going to be a capitated amount that's going to be paid by the state to the hospital and the doctors and the health system, and they're going to say you're going to get 3% more this year than last year. You figure it out. It's already happening. And as that risk sharing happens, teaching kitchens will be the goose that lays the golden egg, because it will keep people out and it will make them better. So, the call to action is consider attending Healthy Kitchens, Healthy Lives, consider asset mapping. You have the largest and most in-depth set of assets I have ever seen in any place. Just map them. Put the puzzle pieces together. Imagine what your teaching kitchen in this community could look like, and how many different components of your community you could engage with pure joy and satisfaction, I might add. And consider who your local champions are. Maybe there is a wealthy family or two in this area who likes your ideas so much that they say, you do it as a beacon, as a flare to the rest of the country, and here's a check. You know, stranger things have happened when you put together that much goodwill and that much talent. So I'll close with this quote from one of the inventors of the internet, an engineer, Alan Kay: the best way to predict the future is to invent it. I really think you're inventing it right here. And it's an honor and a pleasure to be with you. Thank you very much.
Have a little bit of time for Q&A. So does anybody have any questions for you?
If you could identify yourself and speak loudly right here. Take the microphone, sir.
I'm a local physician, Dr. Nancy Rye, and thank you so much for coming up here. It's really quite an honor and pleasure to have someone of your stature coming to visit our community, so thank you. Couple questions. I know Tulane does a really good job with their medical school, I believe, and teaching kitchens. Are there any other medical schools that are doing such a thing that can be kind of copied, or is Tulane kind of a...
Tulane is trying and has licensed it to about a dozen medical schools, and I really applaud them for that. There's a long story. I actually went there and did grand rounds, and they built a teaching kitchen when I presented the same talk there 8 years ago. And I have offered them to join the teaching kitchen because they have such an important piece teaching medical students. But they have opted to just build a model and license it. I personally think it's bigger than that. And I think if we take 30 models and see what the core elements are, we can come up with the elements that everybody could design in different places and not just one to be licensed in every place. I don't think it's a cookie cutter approach any more than I think teaching kitchen should be focused primarily on medical students. Because as you heard, I think it's too big an idea. But there is no other medical student that has done it as expertly as Tulane.
I'm on the faculty at Oakland University William-Beaumont School of Medicine, and I think I'm meeting with them and actually would like to try to introduce this concept to them. I think they're ready for it. And so I just ask if I could email you and get ideas.
Absolutely, I'm happy to give my card to anybody. Any group with a teaching kitchen is a candidate to join the Teaching Kitchen Collaborative. We've grown to a point now where we're thinking of growing only a few members a year in areas where we don't exist. So we're trying to get the VA to join us. The largest hospital in the Mideast has asked to join us. A group, it's actually in Michigan, that's building retirement facilities with teaching kitchens wants to join us. We're trying to build partnerships with groups that could build prototypes for those stakeholder groups that are not yet, whose needs are not yet met. But if you have anything you'd like to brainstorm with me about, I'm happy to talk to you.
The other question I have is for you, is there any way to develop a program at the Culinary Institute for physicians or medical providers to go through some sort of a certification process and have maybe like a mini teaching school for medical people?
There would be a way to possibly do that. The issues you run into is we have a regular curriculum here with students, and they occupy the kitchens from about 7 in the morning till 8:30 at night, 5 days a week. So it's difficult scheduling outside, like anything outside regular curriculum.
So it's a capacity issue.
Yeah, where it's a capacity issue.
To your point, for the last year, the leadership of the Culinary Institute and the Harvard Chan School have been thinking about a certificate program for physicians, RDs, nurses, other people who are health providers who want to learn more about cooking and sustainability and these issues, with a mirror program for chefs who want a certificate to learn how to embed mindfulness and reading nutrition facts into their teaching. Because when you think about it, what we really need are certification and training programs for everybody in the ensemble. Because all of them need expertise in all of these things, but wouldn't it be nice if 5 years from now we have multiple places where people could train and deliver these anywhere and be a member of that ensemble anytime?
So it
That's
has to
the
be
goal.
something where you could do some online and come in person type of thing.
Correct.
Yeah.
So probably 2 weeks in person,
Yeah.
and the rest would be online, live and taped. Yeah. So I think it could work. So we're trying, and we need all the cooking schools to help,
Yeah.
obviously.
Anybody else?
I'm Hans Moss, and I'm the executive director of Groundwork, one of the organizations putting this together. And thank you so much, Dr. Eisenberg. Rich and inspiring, and just a perfect fit for this community at this time. And I just have one suggestion for if you were like me, thinking about all the people that you want to hear this. I want to let you know that we are videotaping it right now, and we will put it out on social media and online, and you can
Can't go
share
to
it
social
all.
media, but they can come here and watch it.
Okay.
I don't want this used for sort of marketing
Okay.
purposes. But if you want to have another group to come and talk about it,
Okay,
you have
okay.
to watch it as many times
Okay,
as you
so
want.
thank you for clarifying.
I'd love it to be on our public television that's here. The college has a channel of
We
their
can
own.
talk about it. I'm just worried it will be taken out of context, and I was pretty informal, and I had agreed to have it for archival and educational purposes, but not social media, so let's just try to
Where was it
respect
that you
that.
suggested?
Well, NMC has a channel, has had a channel, and that might be an avenue where we have control how much profit is coming from it to anybody.
And we can talk about it.
Yeah.
I'm happy for these
There's
ideas
another
to be
audience.
shared.
There's another
This is no
audience.
different from what I talk about in Healthy Kitchens, Healthy Lives to medical audiences, or what I've talked about at RD conferences. So anybody you want to bring to hear this on tape or have me back live again, I'm happy to do it. This is a very generative and generous and extraordinary community. I said to people, I couldn't come yesterday, it was a Jewish holiday. I have to go home tomorrow, so I can't stay here longer. But if you're serious about this, if you want to build this, I will help you. I will introduce you to your 100 cousins. But you have such assets here. By the way, the connection between the culinary, the agriculture, the medical, the political, that you have here is second to none in the country and in the world. You should do something very valuable with it. I'm happy to come back.
Just a quick comment. My name is Roger News, and I'm involved with Groundwork and also involved with the Farm Food and Health Program. Interestingly enough, the meeting we had in January, it'll be 2 years ago this January.
A year ago last January.
Yeah. Daphne Miller came as the culinary speaker. And she, if you recall, those of you who are there, had taken a map of Michigan and actually put together all the different programs, groups that were in support of farm, food, and health, and said she had never been to a place that those three professionals, the professional groups, had ever been in one place at the same time. So you are the second to come here and actually say a similar congratulations to Northwest Michigan and what we have going on here. And I thank you for that very much, because it's an inspiration to have you come here and say what you said. And I think many people in this audience are now really moved by your comments and the insight that you have about what food really is. It is medicine, it is nourishing, it's mindfulness, it's all those wonderful, wonderful adjectives and nouns that you used in your talk. And I thank you very much for being here and being a part of this wonderful day we've had.
Hand it behind you.
By the way, you've heard it twice now, so maybe there's something to it.
That's what I'm saying. There's something going on here.
And Roger's far too modest because he's a serious player in a lot of these health issues. I'll let him talk to me later about it. But I was going to do ask for a survey of the attendees here. They may still do a survey, because I have a white box of a facility we're rehabbing right now. 4,000 square feet are going to be dedicated to a teaching kitchen.
Oh, is this at the elementary school?
Yes, so you've
I've heard about this. So
And-
tell everybody if they don't.
Well, okay, there will be a survey, there's going to be there's handouts on the way to cocktails and so forth. But I was thinking to myself, I was taking a lot of notes, I said, I'm still probably going to do the survey, but damn it, you answered all the questions. You covered it.
By the way, I heard over lunch, where's Brad?
Brian.
Yes.
Brian told me over lunch, if you build a teaching kitchen in a defunct elementary school and you use it as a shared asset for the hospital, for the farmers, for the students, for the retirees, for the food enthusiasts, that's a model for the whole country.
Thank you, that's what we're trying to do.
Anybody else who wants information on that, Brian Mordage, he was working with CHIP Yeah, Brian's way in the back there holding up his hand, and there are materials at the Grand Traverse Food Shed Alliance.
At the Food Shed Alliance table, there are
table.
handouts and a sign-up sheet for those that are interested in helping to further this discussion.
Having said that, give it a lot of thought, because you need to decide what you're going to use it for before you design it.
That's
Well-
exactly the book we're working on.
Because if you want to just design another kitchen, it'll just be another kitchen, so think about it.
You have a blueprint?
Well, you know what, it's going to have to be unique for this community.
Yes.
That's what I keep realizing over and over again. On our first meeting of the Teaching Kitchen Collaborative, we summarized it with one slide of the 3 blind men and the elephant, and it said, if you've seen one teaching kitchen in 2015, you've seen one teaching kitchen. They're all different. But if we can learn from the experience, successes, and failures of 32 and share that with you, and then, you know, I'm happy to come back and be sort of like your teaching kitchen psychotherapist. What are you trying to accomplish? Then you'll know what it should look like physically before you spend lots of money and then kick yourself 10 years later and go, why didn't we think of that? So let me help you.
It's the teaching kitchen whisperer.
Anybody else?
I actually came up from Ann Arbor just now, this afternoon. So I'm the wellness director at Glacier Hills Senior Living Community there. And I'm also a lifestyle coach for the Diabetes Prevention Program for the Ann Arbor YMCA. So I know the missing piece to this evidence-based program, the Diabetes Prevention Program, is the cooking component. Because you teach a curriculum and you are telling and you're having discussions about things. It is, you know, I'm a facilitator, so there's a lot of open-ended questions to the groups. But that piece of, oh, I hate to cook. So insurance companies are paying for this program, but there is no cooking element to it. And that's really the missing piece. So is there any hope of having insurance companies pay for a teaching
The number
kitchen
one goal
program?
of the collaborative is to prove that insurance companies and employers must pay for this from a fiduciary standpoint. Remember, the goal is show that we can reproducibly, in a scalable way, change behaviors, which will change clinical outcomes like weight and blood sugar and blood pressure, which will then bend cost curves. If we can show that with 1,000, 10,000, 40,000 examples, every insurer, every self-insured company, every governmental agency, and every nursing home will talk to the Medicare, Medicaid recipients and say, we've got to pay for it. That's the goal. That's why we're building. Without that, this is more talk. And I didn't do this just to talk about it.
Initially, the enrollment for the program at the Ann Arbor YMCA for the Diabetes Prevention Program was poor because people had to pay for it. Once insurance companies started paying for it, we had wait lists for people to get in.
So I'm going back to the Centers for Disease Control in 2 weeks. Part of the discussion is diabetes prevention 2.0. Because diabetes prevention now is still stuck in 1999
It is, yeah.
with eat low-fat food, which we know is scientifically wrong.
Right.
And it doesn't have cooking, and it doesn't have mindfulness. But diabetes 2.0 should, must, and will save more lives, and then we'll get that paid for. But diabetes prevention was paid for because it proved it worked, and it convinced the federal government, both sides of the aisle, that they would save money making it available to Medicare patients for free. We need to do that with teaching kitchens. That's the goal. And it's the shared aspiration of everybody I let into the collaborative, because why would I waste my time with people that just want to do their own thing? We're all going to do this together. And together we have much more power and proof of reproducibility. But I'd love your card, because I will introduce you to the group that happens to be in Michigan that's building retirement facilities with teaching kitchens, and you need to meet them. It was ordained.
Any more? Balcony seats back here while I'm here?
I'm curious about the moms and dads in the room that are struggling with kids, and whether you like the idea of this second targeted population, which I feel should be the first, which is kids with moms and dads, or kids with teachers, kids with an adult learning to cook together in teams. I think that's uncharted territory that will be explosively powerful.
I agree with you. My son just entered high school here, and for the first time ever, he had gone to a charter school. For the first time ever, he's eating school lunch. And the report I get every day is pizza, hamburgers, French fries. And we are so far behind up here in terms of food. But, you know, we need to start integrating this into the schools and with families. And the problem we have up here is we have such a huge geography. It's very hard to connect with patients when we're trying to teach them about cooking. It almost has to be something on the internet that you can connect with them, because you can't always expect people to drive 2 hours, you know, a couple times a week for instruction. So we have a geography problem that is really challenging. But
in the not too distant future, we'll be able to web stream all the teaching.
Sure.
And Google now has $50 cameras where you'll be able to see the chef on a master screen, because they've demonstrated this already. Technology exists. The chef in Mountain View, California, or in London can have 20 people cooking, and if they just speak, the camera goes to their hands and pans, and you can look at their hands and pans better than if I was looking at them a foot away. That's all going to be in the not too distant future.
And that's something with the teaching kitchen. You could even find some way of doing this locally where people could have access, physicians could refer to this. But I like the mobile kitchen idea too. I think it's a
They're all good ideas, and you know, that's the beauty of it. If you have a different budget or a different geography or a different population, you can have mobile, pop-up, built-in, distant, but you're going to teach the same things.
I'm a pharmacist turned farmer, and at our
Now,
farm.
that's a combination.
And a school chef. And we have a commercial kitchen on our farm. And next week, we have the high school history teacher coming to do a Greek cooking class with some of his students as sous chef. And we gave scholarships to students for the school to come, and that his parents are going to be there.
Oh, wow.
And he's doing he's Greek, and he's doing his grandmother's recipes.
That's cool.
Mary, you forgot about the soup in the schools.
Well,
Introduce yourself.
my name is Mary Rappin, and we also do a lunch program with soup. So we make farm fresh soup, and we sell it to school lunch programs at 40 cents a bowl serving. So.
The kids pick the recipe though.
Well, we've done that. We've done like voting so that they vote for what the soups they like best.
I hear, based on what I'm hearing now, that you have a lot of really wonderful ideas. Imagine if you were part of this collaborative and could just throw those into the mix. I will also tell you that more than 2/3 of the existing teaching kitchens are partnered with local agriculture, either inner city or out in the hinterlands. Vermont.
We're in the hinterlands.
We're in the hinterlands.
We're in Cross Valley.
Yeah, so Vermont, just as an example, is surrounded by farms. The hospital said, if we want you, farmer A, to plow out another X acres so we can get cabbage and mushrooms and cauliflower from you, how much would it cost? The farmer said, this many tens of thousands of dollars. They now have a contract with that farm that's twice the size, that delivers all the fresh organic produce to the hospital. So now the Teaching Kitchen Collaborative has said, shame on us if we don't have relationships with local agriculture, whether we're in the boonies or the middle of the city. So this is also an area where you could really give us ideas, because you're surrounded by agriculture, and I know you care about it. I've never been in a meeting talking about teaching kitchens with people learned about conservation of farmland. I've never been in a meeting like that. You have tons of these people in this room. You can do great things, so thank you. Great example.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Kathy. I'm a transition coach for heart failure patients from Northville, Michigan. So
Great.
down the street from you. So when we talk about our
Hold it closer.
when we talk about our
Yeah, it's good.
parents cooking with our children, the grandparents. So a lot of my patients are grandparents living in the home, and they can teach them their favorite recipes, and that's, I think that's a good idea too, is to look at what your grandparents are able to do with the kids as well. So I'm going to go back and tell them the heart failure coach is prevention, not intervention, and do the teaching kitchen will be much better. So.
Great. Thank you.
I'll be all right without that, Diane.
All right.
One thing about the kids, Doc, is they're so busy. So what we did at our teaching kitchen at Grow Benzie is we brought in the sports teams, and so they had team nights with their parents and the kids, and then they eat as a family. The big one was the football team. They all grew vegetables in our greenhouses.
They grew their own.
Oh, yeah.
And then at the end of the season, they had their heirloom tomato marinara for their big team
And
dinner.
were they proud?
Oh yeah.
Where's this?
This is Grow Benzie.
And what about your beehives?
And we spun the honey. We have our own beehive. The kids help we make bee boxes in our after school program.
Is there anything more wonderful than watching a kid grow the food and then taste and eat and make the food? Is there anything more wonderful than that?
And have their mom try it. That's the thing. Yeah.
So let me tell you a parallel story. So Google, following my lead, built that first teaching kitchen in Mountain View. And we were originally going to offer it preferentially to employees with overweight, obesity, prediabetes, cholesterol. They decided not to do that for confidentiality reasons. And I said, what do we do? We got this $8 billion teaching kitchen. And over the last 5 years, they've realized that one of its great uses in Google is in team building. And the other reality, and the head of Google Food, Michael Bacher, talks about this publicly. He said, when you have a lot of single 28 to 32-year-olds who need a date, they will go to a teaching kitchen to get a date. So the point of this is, it's not one size fits all. And you might build it with one thing in mind, but a dozen other opportunities will come your way if you just build it and support it and welcome people. It's amazing, but I love that story. I really want to see your operation because I've heard great things about it. Again, if you teach kids to plant and harvest, and you teach them to cook it, I can't tell you the joy I've had in my life when, ever since my kids were small, they would say on Father's Day or my birthday, Dad, you can't come home till we tell you, and they would cook for you. But every parent should have that.
Yeah.
And it used to be commonplace. And I'm sure you did that for your parents. So every kid that learns to cook wants to make a meal for grandma, mom, or dad. And it's such a beautiful, why have we lost that? It's so easy to get it back. We think it takes too much time. That's also what we have to prove is an urban myth. If you know what you're doing, you can cook a whole week's of meals on Sunday. If you know what you're doing, you can use organic, local, frozen, whole grains bought in bulk or at a cooperative and cost much less than you spend at Arby's or McDonald's when you're on a SNAP budget. We have to prove that to people so they then can sell it to their peers. That's the next tipping point. Anyway, thank you for listening to me.
Beyond my wildest so thank you. So tomorrow morning, everyone who's registered for the conference, please be prompt as you can. We start at 7 a.m. for continental breakfast, and we have the list of who's going to go to the farmers market to learn about SNAP benefits. Can I please ask one question? If you're not officially registered for the full conference, we do need your tote bag back because we have a few more registrants who haven't gotten their tote bag yet. So we just need 4 more, and that would be a great help to us, so we can move that along. So I'm going to introduce Fred, and he's going to welcome us all to have some wonderful food and drink. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm introducing you guys. Sorry.
Well, thank you, Paula, and thank you, Dr. Eisenberg. That was a wonderful talk, and we enjoyed everything about it. And I'd like to introduce our Vice President of Educational Services, Stephen Siciliano, going to come just to welcome everybody, and then I'll give you directions about getting over the field.
Thank you, Fred. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see such interest in this important and very important topic. This, of course, is our first Culinary Medicine Conference. We at Northwestern Michigan College are pleased to partner with Munson Medical Center and Groundwork Center to present it, including having our top-notch culinary facility, the Great Lakes Culinary Institute, serve as the host. What we're offering this weekend is new to Northern Michigan, but of course not new in the field. The conference has been modeled